Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Before we get into today's training, I'm want to touch some base about what we've been doing as far as the backswing. For 6 weeks now, we've trained without even hitting the ball. We're training our body, we're training our arms, our hands, we're educating our hands. But really, we've just been training the body. And I want to cover a few things as far as how we spend 30 minutes a day with the backswing and the takeaway. I want to talk about this power accumulator number 4 in this arm, because there's going to be a sweet spot based on your makeup of your body. So for example, if I come straight across here, this is just straight across there, it would be right there. So you're going to find a sweet spot. So if I take a shallow swing, I feel more tight here. If I go way up here, that doesn't feel right. So there's a sweet spot that you're going to find when you're practicing the takeaway and the backswing. You're going to find a sweet spot in between this pressure point and this power accumulator number 4 to where it's going to be really, really loose inside there. Meaning when I swing back here, it's really tight, but when I practice in the mirror, that feels really good. So there's more of a sweet spot. So I want you to take some time to practice really elevating the left arm, making the left arm flat, and then finding somewhere in between there. Because when you can get that sweet spot right in between there, then if you drill this, if you've been doing this for a week, 30 minutes, there's at least 1,000 backswings you've done. And if you've done this for 3 weeks, then you're talking about 3,000 movements to where this just becomes an unconscious, skilled habit. Okay? So today's training, we're going to be talking about 3 zones. We're going to cover zone 1 today. The 3 zones are body control, club control, and ball control. Hey Bob, hey David, and you've heard me talk about this before. When you can control the club shaft, you can control the club face, and you can control the club head, you can control the ball. So today we're going to be covering zone 1, which is body control. That includes your feet, your knees, your hips, and your shoulder, and the pivot. And the pivot is the motion of a body moving around a center point, like a door. That's the center point. But in golf, we want to talk about the pivot. And there's really, it's an assembly between a stationary head and a stationary feet. And it's one of the rotational sources of power. Last week we talked about hinge motions. We had horizontal, we had perpendicular, we had rotational. So if you look at the body being, if we look at the body, that's rotational. It's a rotational source of power. We're going to get into some positions of the body. We don't do a lot of position golf. Golf is more about geometry and alignment. But I want you to see what my body does with the pivot. So we're going to look at zone 1, which is body control, and hands are not educated unless they control the body. So the first thing we're going to look at, and I'll do it with a club first, and then we'll do it without a club. But we're just going to look at some of the positions of the pivot. And the pivot, body and balance. So I get here, we always talk about impact fix. This is where my body is, my hips, impact fixed. Then we have address. This is where I'm at address. And then we talk about the startup, hands, arms, shoulders, hips. We talk about the backstroke. And I just want you to pay attention to what my hips are doing. So we got startup, backstroke, top, start down, downstroke, release, and then impact fixed, follow through, and finish. So, just practice this at home in a mirror. So we're going to look at impact fixed. This is where I am in impact fixed. We got address, watch the hips, start up. So you notice how when I took my hands and arms, so this is what we're talking about, educated hands. The hands are not educated until they control the pivot. The pivot's not moving the swing, the hands, the educated hands. As you see how I start up and go to the backstroke, what we covered last week, turn back. So we're talking about educating the hands. So we have educated hands rotationally. We have educated hands horizontally. So you see the right hand is coming back, and we have perpendicular. So it's subtle movements, and if you can just practice this, you'll understand the coordination and synchronization of the body. So here we have address, start up, backstroke, top, start down, downstroke, release, impact fixed, finish, follow through. So we're looking at the feet action, the knee action, the hip turn, and the shoulder turn in this entire pivot. But it's all with educated hands. That's why I covered last week the three hinge motions. We have horizontal, we have perpendicular, we have rotational. So now I'll try it with the plug here. Hands are not educated unless they control the pivot. So now I can just take back, but that really doesn't move the pivot, so it's not synchronized together. The hands aren't controlling the pivot. That's not controlling the pivot. That's just taking the hands and arms back with no pivot motion. So here we are, impact fixed. This is where I want to be at impact. We're at address. Now when I do the startup, that's the hands, startup, backstroke. So as you can see, the hips are going with the hands are leading everything. Hands are leading, and then I'm going to position, once I get to the backstroke, I'm loaded up on my glute, and I'm at the top. Start down, notice the hips. Downstroke, notice the hips. Release, impact fixed. Follow through, and finish. So there's three zones. There's zone 1, which is body control. There's zone 2, which we'll cover next week, which is club control. And then there's zone 3, which is ball control, which we'll cover more about the hands. So what are the feet doing? Well, I want to make sure that my feet are dug into the ground. I want to make sure the weight is just over my ankle bone on the inside of the legs. So now I got my feet in there. My knees, when I start the start up, the left knee is going to come in a little bit. Backstroke. Start to bring in the hips. Top, got my hip turn. So now I got my feet, I got my weight on the ball of my right foot. Start down. I'm going to drive the weight to the ball of the left foot. My right knee, my left knee is going to start to go towards the target. My right knee is going to be driving. So here I am, downstroke, right knee starting to move. Release, I'm firing the right knee, the hips are rotating. Impact, everything is driving down, out, and forward. Impact, fix, impact, follow through, and finish. So you want to get your feet, your knees, your hips, and your shoulder all synchronized and working together with the educated hands. Educated hands are going to control everything. So if I just take a nice casual backswing, it just pulls everything in. Everything is moving. The hands of the orchestra, the conductor. So now I want to go back to what we talked about earlier. I want to make sure when you're practicing the backswing in Hogan's 5 lessons, there's a huge distinction between freedom and here, this lead arm. And I noticed in the past when I would come really flat, it felt more tight versus when I would just take it a little bit more up vertical. And now I feel there's a freedom right in this shoulder socket joint here. And if you do that over and over and over, it becomes an unconscious skilled habit to where you don't have to think about anything other than executing the hands. Hands are in shoulders, hips. We got start down, we got downstroke, release, follow through and finish. Any questions on that so far? I can back up and cover a few things. But really we're going to look at just a few things here about body control. Zone 1 is all about body control. Body control with the feet, the knees, the hips, and the shoulder turn. Shoulder turn. That's it. That's all the shoulder does right there. We all did this here where can you move the shoulders without moving the hips? Can you move the hips without moving the shoulders? If you haven't been able to do that yet, you're going to be able to disassociate and train your brain to do that. But put it all together, pivot is the motion of the body swinging around a center point. The center point is our spine here. Hands, arms, shoulders, hips. Hips. Now in the Homie's book, you talk about the hips starting downswing, but I'm really focused on the feet. The feet, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, and then right from the start down, I'm driving my weight down to the ball of the left foot. Down the ball, left foot. The knees are firing. The hips are firing. The hips are turning. The shoulders are following through. And it's just a chain action of movements. But we've got to educate the hands. So we have the horizontal, perpendicular, and rotational of the hinge. And so we'll go back to how to train this. No club in hand. I'm going to get my ball posture, and I'm going to get at address. Here I'm at address. I'm going to go to impact fixed. That's where I want to be at impact. So I want to notice where is the weight throughout my entire body. I feel weight pushing on my right foot. I feel weight driving in my left ball. I can feel my glutes are activated. I feel my knees driving towards the target. This is impact fixed. This is where we want to get right there, impact fix. Now we also want to get there with a flat left wrist, a bent right wrist, and a slightly arched left wrist. And those are the 3 hinge motions. We have right there. Impact fixed, follow through, finish. And you can sit here and practice from address to impact fixed, follow through, and finish. Same thing we've been doing with Excalibur, pulling the sword out of the ground. That's the Excalibur move. So now if you slow it down and train the brain to feel where the body is and the weight is distributed, this is how you get the dynamic balance in the swing. So at address, I go to impact fixed, follow through, and finish. These are all the things you can do to train your body without ever hitting the ball. So now if we go back to impact fix, now we're back at address. We'll look at startup. Hands, arms, shoulders move simultaneously, a split second behind the hands, hands leading. The hands, now if you see the hands move, you notice my hip, the weight is lowered up to my hip. I'm not swaying, but there is an educated hands controlling the pivot. I'm controlling the pivot, the hips. So there's startup. There's startup right there. You can practice this just right there. This arm, what is that, 7:30? 7:30. 9 o'clock. There's your backstroke. Right there's your backstroke. Without a club, the club's going to bring your arm up a little bit higher, but without a club, there's the backstroke. Right there. Backstroke. So we have startup, backstroke, top. Address, startup, backstroke, top. Downstroke, release, impact fixed. Downstroke, release, impact fixed. Follow through and finish. Address position. Start up. What are my hands doing? Educate your hands. They're rolling, but they're rolling with the pivot motion. Pivot motion is a rotation. There's power here. There's power here. So we're educating the hands. So we have start up, backstroke, top, downstroke, release, impact fixed, follow through, finish. And if we look at the rotation of the hinge motion that we covered last week, it just happens naturally with my arms connected because my pivot, my body, is rotational power. So here I haven't done the perpendicular hinge yet, but as I get to address, start up, back, starts to cock this wrist. In the top, it cocks it there automatically. Downstroke, release, impact fixed, follow through, and finish. Educated hands, educated hands. We covered these hinge motions last week. Horizontal. I don't ever want my left wrist, my lead wrist horizontal. I want it flat and arched. Now it's gonna bend a little bit in the backswing. That's going to get more power, but you can keep it. You can keep it flat and just cock right to the back. But you'll understand more of this when you practice. Practice with just the left wrist. What are the hinge motions of each hand doing separately? So with my right wrist, if I keep that bent on a horizontal plane, and we go back to address, start up, backstroke, top. So that's what the right wrist is doing. Address, start up, bent, backstroke, top. It's like I'm carrying a tray. Now if I put a club on there and I see where the pressure point is in number 3, same thing right there. So I can get here, address, start up, backstroke, top, downstroke, release, impact fixed, follow through and finish. So this is all about body control, the pivot, balance. We want to know what our feet are doing, what our knees are doing, what our hips are doing, what our hip turn is doing, what our shoulder turn is doing. Because the pivot is all about body control. But hands are not educated unless they're controlling the pivot. So this whole pivot is controlled by what the hands are doing. So if I just take my hands back like that, that's really not controlling the pivot. You want to feel that everything's in synchronization, synchronized, and working together. So if you train this slowly without a club first, and then you get to the club, you can go from address, or you can go from impact fixed. This is where you want to finish. This is where the magic happens, controlling the ball. You go back to address, go to startup. Remember slow motion training, startup. Notice how when I start my hands back, my hips are moving. So they're in unison. Where is the weight of my feet? Okay, so that's startup. Backstroke, where's the weight of my feet and my glutes? Top. Now I can feel where all the weight is in my feet. Start down, drive the weight to the ball of the left foot. Release, impact fixed, follow through, and finish. It's relatively easy to practice this stuff in a mirror or in a camera. I have a camera here so I can see my entire body. I can feel my entire body at any stage of the swing. From address to startup, to backstroke, to the top, to the downstroke, to the release, impact fixed, follow through and finish. So the release happens so fast because the club's traveling 100 miles an hour. But if you get to impact fixed, look what my hands are doing. The right one is bent, the left one is arched and flat, and this is what we covered last week, the 3 positions. Horizontal, perpendicular, and rotational. So when I get to the impact, release and impact, that's exactly what I want to be. So you want to educate your hands to control the body. Zone 1 is all about body control. Zone 2 is about club control. And zone 3 is about ball control, which we'll cover in a couple of weeks. This week is all about body control. And so I want you to train your body. So here I am, and I'm going to do a face on and down the line here in a second. So here I am at impact fixed. Impact fixed. And I'm just working on the body. Don't worry about the hands. But if I was in impact fix, this is what my hips would be. I can feel the weight. I can feel my rear foot pushing off the ball, and I can feel the weight on the ball on my left foot. I can feel that weight. There's power in there. There's ground force in there. So that's impact fix. Here we're at address. And if I go to startup, and I put my hands together, I want to focus on my body now. So the startup, my hands are starting everything. Startup. Notice how when we talked about rotational power last week, notice how they rotate. They're just rotating naturally because they're in front of my chest. If they rotate without your chest moving, that could cause some unnecessary movements in the swing, especially in the downswing when you snap hook it. So here we have startup. Can you hold this position for 8 seconds? Can you hold it for 10 seconds? Can you just do this and just feel what startup feels like? And where is the weight? What is the foot doing? What is the knee doing? What is the hip doing? How far is the hip turning? And what are the shoulders doing? So that's startup, backstroke. Backstroke, and then top. What are the hips doing? What are the feet doing? What are the knees doing? We're all just training here body control. So now we have startup, backstroke, top. We've been training this all month long, all January and all February, the first part of the backswing. Now we're just going to go a little bit deeper and break it down piece by piece. So then we get to startup, backstroke, top. Well, now we got to do the downstroke. Down, out, which is the release, forward, which is impact, follow through, finish. So we're going back, up and in. We're going down, out, and forward. So we're going back, up, and in. And then we're going down, out, and forward. So we got impact fixed. Now if you notice how my left glute is not out here, it's stuck right against the wall. You know, the further away you're from the wall, the more balance issues you're going to have in the swing. And a lot of people do this stuff. So when we look at impact fix, if you practice impact fix, you can feel the glute, and you can look. I can see right there that the glute's not out here. So just practicing impact fix for a few minutes. What if you did an impact fix and then did Excalibur sword? This will really help you ingrain the follow through and the finish. The follow through and the finish. So now we have impact fixed. We are at address. Startup. So if you notice your startup, there's rotation. And it's not exaggerated rotation. It's just I'm rotating. So if you're going to shake someone's hand right there, that's on playing. So there's startup. There's the backstroke. Right up there. See how I'm right there? And then top right there. But I'm just training this here to see what my hips are doing. The body motion, pivot control, and the shoulders. The feet, knees, hips, shoulders. So here's startup. Startup, backstroke, top. Top, downstroke, release, butt still against the wall, impact fixed, follow through, finish. You guys can do this indoors all day long, in a mirror, practicing. Hey, Bo, hey, Fuller. Let's see who's all in the gang here. So if you guys missed the beginning of this, that's all right. It's been recorded. there's 3 zones in the golf swing. Zone 1 is body control, what we just covered, the pivot. Zone 2 is club control. We'll cover that next week. And zone 3 is ball control. And you always hear me saying, when you control the club shaft, you control the club head, the club face, you can control the ball. But the pivot is the engine here. It's the power, it's the stability, it's the balance. But hands are not educated unless they control the pivot. So the body is not controlling the hands are controlling the body. And we're just going to keep going over this until you get it, Last week we talked about hinge motions. We got a horizontal plane here. We got a perpendicular plane here. We have rotational. Okay? So rotationally wise, I can look just like Ricky Fowler and go just like this, but there's no synchronization, because this used to be his old swing where he would just get up here, but nothing was educated. It wasn't moving in unison. So if I educate the hand and I start the hands at startup, that's going to move my pivot, my hips. It's going to move my feet. It's going to move my knees. I can feel everything moving in unison. So this is startup. The hands are educating everything. The hands. Those 3 pivot, those 3 rotations we talked about last week. The turn and the roll, the cocking and uncocking, bending. So startup, backstroke, top. I can do that all day after I educate and just train. Startup, backstroke, top. I'm loaded. I've got power everywhere. I've got tension everywhere. I've got dynamic balance everywhere. I know the weight is going to go. I'm going to go down to the ball of my left foot. Downstroke. I'm going to release. And then I'm going to go to impact fix. Follow through and finish. So it would make a lot of sense if you guys got back into the takeaway, the backswing and takeaway, and you just practice this left arm elevation, left arm elevation, left arm elevation. Because once you do this 1,000 times, 3,000 times in the last 3 weeks, that left arm, I don't have to think about it in the swing. It's already positioned. I know exactly what my backswing is going to do. That left arm is going to be right there. And all you do is start down. Any questions? So zone 1 is body control. Want to pay attention to what the feet are doing, the knees are doing, the hips are doing, the hip turn is doing, the shoulder turn. And it's all done with educated hands. Educated hands. We have the horizontal, we have the perpendicular, we have the rotational. So we'll go back to perpendicular. I cock the left wrist. There's power right there. You can actually see the cupping of the left wrist. So obviously there's some horizontal of the left wrist. And then as I turn my pivot, it's rotating. There's rotational power there. So if I just bring my left arm right off my chest, that'd be a pretty flat plane. Now if I bring my left arm across my chest, it'd be a pretty flat plane. See how it's even with my shoulders. But if I go up a little bit higher and I elevate my arm just a little bit. So there's, let's see, vertical, real high. So you can get up to practice real high, practice real flat, and just find that sweet spot of how your body joints work and where your muscles at. My sweet spot is right there. I don't care what this arm's doing out there. I know that when I start down, it's going to get connected to my side. So when you practice the downswing and you get to here, just pull down. If you pull down, this is going to get connected. So again, we're educating the hands, control the pivot. Well, when I educate my hands to start the downswing, my hips are moving. So my hips are going to lead the swing, but my educated hands, notice, if I just get to here and I do nothing but pull my arms down, my hips going to naturally want to go. So practice that, train it, see what it feels like. So we're at address, we're at startup, backstroke, top, downstroke, release, impact, finish, impact, follow through, finish. Take the hands, execute the hands with zone 1 body control. It's all about the feet, the knees, the hips, the shoulders. And just practice those stations. You know, we have impact fixed. Practice impact fixed without a club. Then when you're finished, grab a club and do the exhale drill. So you can really dial in the follow through and the finish. Follow through and the finish. A lot of us in here, we don't follow through, we don't finish. That's just a fact. But you can train yourself over and over and over to follow through and finish just by doing the Excalibur drill. Not to mention you get more flexibility, more rotation. It works on your cardiovascular. So, address, startup, backstroke, top. Downstroke, release, impact fixed, follow through, finish. Address, startup, backstroke, top, downstroke, release, impact fixed, follow through, finish. You got to put in the work, guys. Break this stuff down for all you guys in the winter months. This should be something really easy to do. You can still practice. You can still hit balls. You can just train this 30 minutes a day. Everything we do the last 6 weeks has been just training the body and the brain to work together. Next week, we'll be covering club control, and then the following week, ball control. You guys have any questions? Get on my calendar. You need to see me, get on my calendar. Let's do a Zoom call. Anyhow, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday. I think we'll be doing some training live from the course again on Tuesday. Take care.